Fini danser belle, fini danser belle.
Aïe, nanano, fini danser belle.
Fini danser belle, fini danser belle.
Aïe, nanano, fini danser belle.
Fini danser belle.
Aïe, nanano,
Fini danser belle.
aïe, nanano,
Fini danser belle.
aïe, nanano, fini danser belle.
Fini danser belle, fini danser belle.
Aïe, nanano, fini danser belle.
Fini danser belle, fini danser belle.
Aïe, nanano, fini danser belle.
Mama mwen pe danser.
Oui, nanano,
Papa mwen pe danser.
oui, nanano,
C'est mwen pe danser.
oui, nanano, aïe, nanano, fini danser belle.
Bonjour tout le monde. Welcome to the third episode of Tout, Bagay, Patwa. Annou, Palé, Kambule. Today, we are going to learn all about Kambule from our guests, Eintou Springer, Atillah Springer, and Dara Healy, three phenomenal women who are no strangers to the cultural sphere of Trinidad and Tobago. And of course, we also have our co-host, Kevon Swift. Bonjour, Kevon.
Bonjour Aisha, comment y est?
Yes, muela, muela. And where would we be if it were not for the co-creator of this show, Namdi Hodge?
Bonjour tout le monde, bonjour tout le monde.
Namdi is going to give us a Patois proverb to start us off. Take it away, Namdi.
Hayi moun,
Hi Moon.
me pa bayo panyen,
Me pa bayo.
panyen
Panyen.
ou chaye dlo.
Chayetlo.
Hayi moun,
Hi Moon.
me pa bayo panyen
Me pa bayo payen.
pou chaye dlo.
Chayetlo.
Right? So you can hate somebody. Can you carry water in a basket? Is that possible? So it means you can hate somebody but still be humane towards them.
Merci, Mr. Director, pour Proverb Salad. Thank you, Mr. Director, for that proverb. And we're going to get straight into the show. And we're going to speak right now to Eintou, Dara, Atillah. We're going to ask them about the backgrounds of Camboulay. Camboulay, Ken, brûler. Is there a link between this idea of can brûler, the French burnt cane, and Camboulay, Eintou? Where does the term come from?
Well, the first thing I want to do is, as we are talking Kambule, to pay homage to the ancestors of Kambule, those ones who have gone before, those ones who with their fighting spirits, their bois, fought for the carnival that we now have. And we must always, whether it's Joe Talmona, whether it's Sophie Bella, whether it's Benji, Mumu, whoever they are, we remember them. And, you know, our elders passed on things by proverbs. So tomorrow is Mother's Day, and I just wanted to share the favorite proverb of my own mother, as she taught us to experience life, and I hope you don't mind. So she used to say, I always used to ask questions. She used to say, petit cochon, dit grand cochon. Maman, comment si bouche si long? Maman dit, tanto, tanto, you know. So as we experience life, what a métier impartial. So I just wanted to remember the wisdom, the words of the ancestors. To come to Kambule, there's been an unfortunate conflation between the French Kambule, bird cane, and Kambule, the Kikongo word meaning procession. I will just share an account from a historian of the day, Fraser, who says, in the days of slavery, whenever fire broke out upon an estate, the slaves and the surrounding properties were immediately mustered and marched to the spots. Horns and shells were blown to collect them, and the gangs were followed by the drivers, cracking their whips and urging them with cries and blows to their work. After emancipation, the Negroes began to represent the scene as a kind of commemoration of the change of their condition. And the procession of the Kambule used to take place on the night of the 1st of August, the date of their emancipation, and was kept up much for the same reason as the John Canoe in Jamaica. That is of the historian of the time, Fraser, one of the best known historians. So it makes it very clear. One, that the enslaved went in procession.
Right.
Two, that they went to put out the fires in the cane field, which most likely they themselves had set. Three, they had their horns, they had their shells, their conch shells, they had their lavoués, because each of these groups had a chantuelle or lead singer would sing. After emancipation, that boule de feu, that flambeau that they carried, became a great symbol of emancipation. It's fire. It's the flame of freedom. It's the Statue of Liberty with the flame in her hand. You know, it's a universal symbol. But we, our enslaved, had it long, long before.
Right.
You know? So, so there became this unfortunate collapse between Kambule, the burning of the cane, and the procession of Africans going to put out the fire with their flambeau, with their conch shells, with their lavoués. And this procession with all these things, including their drum after a while, became symbolic of their emancipation. Why else would it be carried out on the 1st of August every year?
That is an important clarification you made right there, because I think for the most part, we still have within our culture people talking about Patois being broken French and not recognizing the African roots that we have here. Kambule being a procession, a word from a Congolese language, and it shows the act that came to them after emancipation. So Kambule is not about the riots per se, it's really that procession after emancipation, correct?
The procession during enslavement, when they went to put out the fires, that became, with all the elements that became part of the celebration of emancipation.
Okay.
So all these facets of the things of the procession, the lavoué, the musical instruments, the horns and whatever, amplified by more, the chantuelle, all of these. It is no accident that it came from a Kikongo word.
Right.
Because when you look at it now, they were also given sticks to go through in case they meet snake and thing. And that the stick fight, the art of the stick fight itself was Congolese. So it is no wonder that a Kikongo word, Kambule, was mixed with this enslavement and all of that.
Right.
So there are a lot of elements inside there.
I like these elements you're talking about here, and I like how you pointed to that link we have with Calendar, Kambule, all of these of our Congolese origins. I want to go back to the elements because you mentioned some interesting thing there that I would really love for us to discover a bit more. So, Kisa, boule de feu, what exactly is the boule de feu? We hear boule de feu.
The flambeau.
Right.
The flambeau.
Ball of fire, but flambeau.
Which became a symbol of freedom, as a torch is everywhere. A torch everywhere is a symbol of freedom.
I want to go to this other element here, and you mentioned it. Kimoun Chantwell Laye. Who is the Chantwell? What role did the Chantwell have with Kambule?
I Bonje. Chantwell. L'homme qui chante. L'homme qui chante. L'homme qui chante. Avec tout cœur. L'homme qui chante. We're going into
Tout chili.
We're going into the bush, and Liverpool, one of them, and in his great book on pre-independence calypso, Role, he talks about the fact that the art of the stick fight itself was Congo, but because the Yoruba presence in that area was so strong, especially in the area at the time from 1841, when over 7,000 liberated Africans came, a lot of the chants came from Yoruba type forms. The music of the influence is well documented by Maureen Warner Lewis. So the songs themselves would have been sung in Patwa, but the formation and even some of the actual words, Role describes it as Yoruba war chants.
Okay.
Yoruba war chants. I had the name of one of them right down here, but
these war chants by chance, those are the Lavwe we're talking about, because in our previous edition with Rondell from the Bow Academy, we spoke about Lavwe, but in Kambule, the war chants.
Yes, yes.
Right. What's the correlation of the jamet? Now you hear jamet in local parlance and you're thinking jamet. I think Saucy Wow and such promoted an idea of jamet and reintroduced the term to the local parlance. So what exactly is the jamet?
Please. Don't stop me. Right. Jamet, below the waist, the jamets.
Right.
Jamets were the women of the backyard. And they rejoice in behaving as scandalously as possible, showing melodious backsides, literally and figuratively, in the place of the so-called decent middle class.
Wonderful.
And
I just wanted to jump in and say something else about jamets as well.
Yes,
In that the term jamet didn't only refer to women. That's a more recent definition. But just to say that the whole idea of jamet is below, right? So anything that's below a particular, below specifically the poverty line. And you know, in Port of Spain, you had definite lines that demarcated where people who were below the poverty line lived. So the bridge was a line.
That's why you still hear about behind the
which-
bridge.
Exactly. The cathedral. If you look at the cathedral on Independence Square and its positioning, anything behind that is poverty, right? And you see those lines through Port of Spain and in different ways, you know, marking the difference between those who have and those who did not have in terms of material possession. But what was lacking in material possession was replaced by rich culture, was replaced by music, was replaced by community that was very different to the community that existed amongst the people who had material wealth. And
wow,
you know, the whole question of in those yards, those barrack yards, which were so symbolic of the absolute and abject poverty that people lived in, there were still systems of kinship, systems of royalty that existed in those spaces, systems of respect, hierarchy, and those systems and those structures were played out in the mass, played out in the bands, played out in the ascendancy of the Chantwell, the ascendancy of the Obiaman, the people who did the ancestral masking, you know, all of these people were very important and very much not just part of the Jamet class, but they were leaders and front runners of preserving a particular belief system and a particular way of surviving the continued disrespect and oppression that exists in the society.
So Jamet man, Jamet woman, that is a good socio-cultural context you just gave us there, Atillah. And going back to Entou's point, it was really reflected. I mean, the way they conducted themselves, the way that they stood out is really a personification of the resistance within Kambule, right?
I want
time I wouldn't mind adding something as well.
Sure.
All right, I wanted to include the fact that the Jamet woman, she was not a passive recipient of, name calling or labels or anything like that. I just want to make clear that she was also very much part of the ethos of warriorhood in the barrack, right? She was very much a part of resistance. And so the throwing up of the dress to show the backside and so on, that was resistance. But also his history documents that during the Kambule itself, when there was the face-off, and even when, because the stick fighting groups used to war all the time, the women were always there. Yeah, and they were an important part of community, of resistance, but of warriorhood as well.
So post-emancipation, the Jamet is that symbol of resistance, that real strong leadership that we see from women within our culture. And it really goes beyond what one might want to simplify a Jamet as. I think that context is really important for us to understand here. The last term I want to explore, and Atillah, while I have you in focus, you can tell me and then Dara and Tout, the role of the tambu bamboo. Now, I was a social studies buff and I heard of tambu bamboo before, but I'm not sure if everybody is aware as to what tambu bamboo is and the role of that within Kambule. Tambu bamboo.
So tambu being a word meaning drum and bamboo, well, being bamboo. You know, there was the Summary Offences Act of 1884, which effectively banned the drum. And that ushered in a period of exploration and innovation. I like to say that, you know, musicians in Trinidad were the original design thinkers. And if you know about design thinking and how design thinking is being applied in business and all that kind of thing, you know, design thinking in terms of musical accompaniment on the road, right, is absolutely part of our history and of our experience of insisting that we must have music when we going on the road to do this work that we have to do, this sacred procession, right? And so, you know, that important thing about having music, and also music that could move, and music that can accompany you on the way. You know, the mobility of the music is especially important. And so, which is why the tambu bambu, of course, becomes the thing that emerges just after the drum is banned. And within the space of 20 to 30 years, you know, the tambu bambu became not so practical because it used to mash up plenty. The road couldn't deal with it, etc., etc., etc. So the tambu bambu, in terms of the continuum, was not a practical and survivable and replicable and scalable type of music, which is why it's not still like a focal point, which is why it gave way to the steel band and to other forms of music. But, you know, it's a crucial point in the process to reach there. It was a prototype that was developed in order for us to innovate, ideate, go back again, explore, figure it out, take it out on the road again, and then until we got the steel pan. And we are still ideating with the steel pan up until today. And, you know, that's kind of what I have to say about tambu bambu.
Bambu.
I love tambu bambu music though. It's really amazing.
Wonderful, wonderful. Dara, Eintou, tambu bambu. What does that mean to you?
Well, I love tambu bambu music. I always have. From a child, I always found it was just so fascinating. And when you listen to a lot of music, what always interests me also, and later on in life when I began to do research into the linkages between the African continent and diaspora, you could hear some of those, the instruments in that music. Sometimes I feel like I can hear it in Afrobeat. I feel like I can hear it in Haitian music, and you know, music coming out of African communities in Latin America and so on. That particular rhythm up and down, the beat up and down, and it was used because of the banning of the drum. It was used for wakes. It was used in stick fight. It was used in Dame Lorraine Ball. So there are still tambu bambu bands, maybe about 3 or 4 in the country. And I don't think that there are very many bands. I'm not sure if there are any in Tobago, but we could always find out. But the tambu bambu, I want to just say one thing, final thing about that, in that whenever we have done cultural work, working with cultural organizations around carnival time, you find that that's when everybody wants to hear tambu bambu. And there's always a challenge of bringing the band up, paying for transport, paying the band, and so on. And I feel like we put a lot of restrictions into how we preserve our culture. And I feel that discussions like this need to happen in terms of what is the value to our culture, to Trinidad and Tobago, of forms of musical expression like the tambu bambu, and how could we do away with these excuses to make sure that these forms don't perish, and also how can people like ourselves use the opportunity being presented in a way by a situation that is forcing us to go more digital and so on. How can we use this as an opportunity to ensure that we can bring this music to young people, to more audiences and so on? Because if they could hear it, I think they would love it too. So.
Wonderful, wonderful. And on that note, we, of course, are going to close up this first section. So thank you very much, Dara. Thank you, Eintou. Thank you, Atillah.
Begora, epi jabla senyon. Begora, epi jabla sete. Begora, for cruel et mauvais.
Okay, good afternoon. Welcome back. Thank you so much, Namdi. And we are going to go into the segment about the Camboulay Riots, the event itself. So we have been talking about Camboulay, and we've learned this afternoon that there's a much deeper historical origin from Yoruba, from West Africa, to that word. But what about the riots themselves? Now we're going to get into the event. What led up to what we know as the Camboulay Riots? Miss Eintou Springer, I would like to start with you.
All right. Now, the first thing I want to say is that there was not one Camboulay riot. We know the Port of Spain one that happened on 27th of February, 1881. But there were more serious riots in Princestown and in San Fernando, where people get killed and all kind of things. In fact, over the years, there were riots in Kufa, in Aruca. There was a huge riot in Aruca in 1891, where the stick fighters and them, Cimarron and Granger and Benji Mumu and the whole set of them went and attacked the police station with their branding and said, Sortie, come out here, we will feed all the flesh to the birds, Sortie. The police are there to take their drums and their sticks. They had 2 drums, shack, and stick, and the police take them. They follow them down the road. And the thing last, that was Easter Monday. It went Easter Monday, Easter Tuesday, whole day riot. They had to send for 2 set of detachments from Port of Spain. Some sergeant named Okat get his head bust, and they take his helmet and use it as a trophy. And next sergeant get flick away. All kind of thing. Too bagay. So we have to understand that there was continuous resistance to any attempt to ban the Kambule. Not only that, I'm talking about those 1881 and after. There was a big riot in 1858, where the rundown, I think, was Prince Street, and can't remember right now, but was 4,000 denizens of the backyard, led by the stick fighters and the Jamet women, beat the police. 4,000, can you imagine that? Wow. Because the police were banning. And the thing is that the Kambule, there were a series of laws enacted over many years to try to stop the Kambule. And they had the most nasty thing to say about Kambule. An annual display of abomination. You know, the newspapers had that kind of things. It's all documented. And a lot of it is in my play, Kambule, where we talk about these things, right? And the people just had it up to their teeth. But in 1805, we had riots planned for Diego Martin, right? So the Haitian Revolution had repercussions here, you know, and the people were very clear about their spirituality and all of that, because in 1805, when they were planning their revolt, they found evidence of people taking the Holy Sacrament and saying, Penuka maje, penuka manger. The bread that we eat is the flesh of the white man. Venuka bouye, c'est sang beke. 1805.
Wow.
You know,
So this thing had been bubbling for many, many years and was erupting continuously.
continuously. You had people like, what was the girl name again? Dara, Atillah, remind me. Tisbe. There was an attack, continuous attack on people who practice African spirituality. That demon Begora from Dego Martin, who used to terrorize and torture and enslave people in his caves, and where Grosjean, reputed to be one of the first Calypsonians, and so all of that. So you cannot look at the 1881 revolution as an isolated incident, right? It is part of the continuum of resistance which bubbled over. But like I say, in 1858, 1859, coming down, there were all these revolts. And of course, the fact that from the time that people smelled that emancipation was coming, it became more and more obvious. On August 1st, 1834, when the governor read the Emancipation Act at the Treasury building, there was rioting in Port-of-Spain for about a week.
Wow.
People refused to go back to the plantations. They settled in places, East Dry River again, Belmont, and all those places. So Kambule is not an event. It's not an event. It is very important. It's part of the history of resistance.
In it was like 1878, Captain Arthur Baker came to Trinidad. So not having a context of what Carnival meant to the people, he decided that he was going to stamp this thing out by any means necessary. And so he started his planning and organizing.
I don't think it was so much not having an idea. He was part of the white elite and they hated this thing and they wanted it done. They wanted it gone. And he was the instrument to get rid of it.
Well, and I mean, there was also the tension between the people who were French, people who, the planter classes who were French, and the administrators who were British. And so there was definitely a feeling that, this is all tied to this French licentiousness and, liking to party, et cetera, and we have to stamp that out. And, in reading Hollis Liverpool's book, The Great Chalk Dust, writing about rituals and power and rebellion, he also talks about all of the pulling and tugging that was going on amongst the upper classes as well. And so there was, I wouldn't say that everybody in the upper classes were against the Kambule, because some of them also found themselves taking part. Some of them also very much were into the stick fight. Some of them also perhaps in some way saw some value to what was going on. But as Ms. Eintou points out, there was absolutely the thought leaders of the time, the intellectual, the people who were writing in what became the Trinidad Guardian. So I think it was the Gazette. Gotcha. The people who were writing then, who would have been the naysayers, the same people basically who are still writing in the papers now, talking about, you know, Camboulay is just about criminals, etc., etc. I mean, it's amazing how the rhetoric has remained the same 100 and something years later, in speaking ill against this Camboulay celebration, right? And so in 1880, Captain Baker launched a surprise attack against the stick fighters, and was successful in that he was able to arrest quite a few of them. He took away their sticks, and that caused a lot of consternation amongst the different groups, the different bands in and around Port of Spain, and as Ms. Eintou was saying, throughout the entire society, throughout the country. So in the years that preceded, there were riots that happened in Princestown, in Arouca, etc., etc. So in 1881, you have a situation where people have decided that Baker is not going to get away with what he did the year before, right? And so this is what is powerful about Camboulay. It is about people standing up and saying, my moment of joy is my moment of joy. And you, Mr. Policeman, you are not taking that away from me. Wow. You know, and yeah, I mean, it's such a thing of beauty to think about the people of Port of Spain getting together to fight a common enemy. Because, you know, in some ways we are in a similar position now.
Well, I wanted to ask one question out of the segment here. I wanted to talk about the role of Patwa, because Ms. Eintou spoke about the lavway that was said when they came to the police station. What role did Patwa play in all of these riots, the many riots? Why was Patwa used as a language, and why is it important for Patwa to be a language that is used at that time?
Okay. We have to credit our ancestors. I think that I know that the creation of Patwa was a revolutionary act. People were brought here from the motherland, from all the different peoples. You had Congo, you had Yoruba, you had Temne, you had Mandingo, all these peoples. In each of these countries, you could have hundreds of different languages. And then you had the languages of the oppressor, the French, the Spanish. And our ancestors devised a language that they could communicate amongst themselves and plan revolution. That is an act of revolution. That is a high revolutionary act. You know, in Shakespeare, in The Tempest, when Caliban says to Prospero, you taught me your language, and pox on it, I've learned how to curse. You know?
Yeah.
Our people learned how to curse.
Nice.
The oppressors by the development of language. And the development of language was the medium for planning, for organization, for socializing, for expressing the deepest thoughts, some of which up to now cannot be said in English. And that is why so many of the proverbs are in Patwa. My mother's proverbs are in Patwa, you know. So the Patwa was an instrument of revolution. The Patwa was an instrument of planning. The Patwa has been savaged, deliberately regarded as langage cochon, hog language. Papa Lesa, don't talk that. The very our very grandparents and parents who spoke it used it, one, as it was then, as a secret means of communication among themselves, and two, they were afraid that by speaking this language, you would be denied the opportunity for education, that it would limit your ability to do well in school, so that quickly they stopped talking Patwa. My parents, the old people, spoke it all the time. And I made the mistake when I was about 12 years old, and they were having a conversation about me. And I interrupted and said, no. And they watched me. That was the last time they spoke it in my presence,
Wow.
So Patwa is a revolutionary language. Its rhythm, its cadence is distinctly different from the rhythm of the languages of the oppressor. And blessings on Namdi for what he's doing. Blessings on you, blessings on you. I mean, being with Namdi over the past few years has been such a joy to be able to hear and experience the Patwa and to remind me of all that I knew and may have forgotten, So it's very emotional for me coming back to it and hearing again the old people's voice.
Gardez-moi, et pas me sacrer ça moi. Gardez-moi, et pas me sacrer ça moi. Gardez-moi, et pas me sacrer ça moi.
Okay, so we're going to go into the segment now where we explore the Patwa music of Kamboulay.
So this one actually has Captain Baker's name mentioned in it, right? So let's just say the words together. Kite ban mwen passe.
Kite ban mwen passe.
Right, which means let my ban pass or let my ban through. So Captain Baker, kite ban mwen ba mwen.
Captain Baker, kite ban mwen.
Tampui souple.
Tampui souple.
Which means, Captain Baker, leave my ban alone for me, please. But it's more like a threat. It's not a plea. It's like if your mother said when you're small, Atillah, close that fridge door for me, please. It's like that.
Captain Baker, kite ban mwen ba mwen, kite ban mwen passe, tampui souple, si yo leve la maman décide. Captain Baker, kite ban mwen ba mwen, tampui souple, kite ban mwen passe, tampui souple, ay, tampui souple. Captain Baker, kite ban mwen ba mwen, kite ban mwen passe, tampui souple, si moi leve la main, tout moun hele. Captain Baker, kite ban mwen ba mwen, tampui souple.
Well, telling it's about resistance. It's about, even though it sounds, well, what I like is how sweet it sounds. And, but yet there is a threat beneath all the sweetness of the love way. It's there are a few things inside of there. One, that they refer to the concept of a band, which means that, which reminds us of the fact that the people at the time, they formed natural cliques and groupings based on either where they were from, based on language, based on cultural affiliations and so on. And one of the fascinating facts about 1881 is that although the bands were very competitive, and the stick fighters, they would fight, they would war, in 1881, after Captain Baker did his nonsense in 1880, they came together under the common mission of dealing with Captain Baker.
I wanted to say, Namdi, that what I got from it was a note of mockery as well. You know, it's like we don't actually have to ask here because we're gonna pass anyway. there's this kind of asking you, but you know what will happen if you don't let me pass.
This is the love way. Let's say prisonnier levé.
Prisonnier levé.
Mettez lumière by Congo Bara.
Mettez lumière by Congo Bara.
Now the words mean put a light, but they could mean actually to work obi on him, either to work obi on him
exactly.
or to set him afire, perhaps. But there's about 3 meanings hidden in the words here.
But I also think that particular song is very also double entendre because it means the man dead, so we go put a light, light in.
Triple entendre, it have like 3 meanings.
Into hell. Yeah. So I think there's that element of meaning too.
Prisonnier levé, mettez lumière by Congo Bara, mettez lumière by Congo Bara, mettez lumière by Congo Telewa. Prisonnier levé, mettez lumière by Congo Bara, mettez lumière by Congo Bara, Congo Bara captewe fumwe. Prisonnier levé, mettez lumière by Congo Bara.
The same multiple layers of meaning, I think, come out in that song as well. You know, what kind of light will they put in for Congo Bara? Who is this, dread, deeply disliked person who, would have made people's lives hellish. They lighten his way to hell. They put in light for him so that he can't see his way. But also, putting a light, as a way of marking the death of somebody. It's the multiple layers of meaning, I feel, also disguise what they really mean. We'll have to go back and talk to them, raise them up, and ask them, so what all they really did mean?
This one is actually mentioning a corporal's name, all right? So let's just say it together. Corporal Kujo.
Corporal Kujo.
Si ou chembe mwe.
Si ou chembe mwe.
Lage mwe.
Lage mwe.
So if you hold me, if you catch me, this actually is a calendar song. So if you catch me, let me go.
Corporal Kujo, si ou chembe mwe, lage mwe. Si ou chembe mwe, lage mwe. Si ou chembe mwe, lage mwe.
The amazing tambour bamboo inside of there. Yeah, it just it makes everything different. It makes everything different, and that was it.
It's interesting also that the corporal's name is Kodjo.
Yes, which is an African name.
Yeah. And I mean, was it that, at the time there were all of these police, well, they were recruiting police from Barbados, I believe it was.
Yes.
And so, those officers had a very bad name. They had a very, very bad name. And so I'm not surprised that they were singing about them personal. It's very interesting that these stick fighters sang directly to the police. And there are a number of lavways that speak directly to the police. If the sergeant tried to stop with, the doctor could dress the body, bend the angle on them.
I think one of the important points as well is that none of the songs express a desire or willingness or even a thought about giving in. So it's always about resistance And even though there are all these underlying threads, they still say, you better let me go. They're calling you by name first of all, so they're calling you out, and then they say you better let me go. So I think that is an important point too in terms of the songs that came out of the era.
So let's say together, Juve Barrio.
Juve Barrio.
Pa leve la main.
Pa leve la main.
Asuyo.
Asuyo.
Right? So it means it is Juve. Block them, but don't raise your hand on them. Don't hit them. Right? So Juve, it's Juve. You could block them. You could block the bands, I guess. But don't hit them. Don't raise your hands on them.
I'll tell you a story you do not know. It's about Carnival and Calypso. It is the folk song and ballad of that beautiful island of Trinidad. Every year there's Carnival, don't forget. That is Trinidad National Fete. On Carnival morning,
I miss Juve.
Everyone they would start to rhyme.
I won't ball, okay? As you can see, there's a job over my shoulder there. he and all making poo your mouth, like, you really gonna do that, boy?
Well, I think also in that song you see the whole notion of the contention. The song is obviously saying to whoever is in authority, right? To watch how you're treating with them. I'm also struck by the music in there, the harmonizing, the way how the love way the Patwa is used and how the love way comes across so sweetly. But again, I like the fact that it is not a begging, it's more of an instruction, and it speaks to the importance of continuing that tradition of Juve, which is and of course the word itself, the opening of the day and so on. There are whole Juve traditions which speak to ancestral veneration, which remember, the sacrifices and so that were made by ancestors during enslavement. It's a ritual, and the song invokes all of those memories, all of those important points.
Okay, so this is actually a song by Atillah, but there's a chant from Kambule, as he actually says in the song, as you can see here, right? So let's say the title, Zinge Talala.
Zinge Talala.
Zinge Talala.
So, Zanfan sans mama.
Zanfan
sans mama.
Malewe.
Malewe.
Zanfan sans mama.
Zanfan sans mama.
Malewe.
Malewe.
You take a chanter.
You take a chanter.
En tant Kamboulé.
En tant Kamboulé.
My listeners who don't know, this is an ancient number from the long ago. This peculiar rhythm and melody was sung in the days of slavery. This song originated far in the dismal waste of East Africa.
That's really beautiful, but yeah, I mean, it speaks again to the importance of mothers and to the value that is placed on motherhood within African society, right? And the fact that this song was sung at during Camboulay is also significant, because certainly children would have been separated from their mothers in large quantities during enslavement. And so, it is possible that they are referring to that trauma of losing your mother. It's possible that they are referring to, mothers who are unable to mother their children because of the trauma of how the child reached there. So there's the song is a song of trauma and loss. And the fact that songs like this were sung during the Camboulay, just prove the point that that procession was so much more than just about joy.
And that is why in the Camboulay, we make a point, one of the high points in the production is when the women, Mama, your son in the grave already, your son in the grave already, take a towel and burn your belly, Mama. And that is one of the points in the Camboulay where they talk about what is happening in the communities and the loss of their men folk, the loss of their boy children, the loss of children in their community, and we try as much to get the pathos and the pain of that situation. We have the joy of the eventual victory, but the harshness of the lives of the people living in those communities, and the fact that despite all of that, they took courage into their own hands to fight and stand up.
One man in the road, one man in the road in the morning, one man in the road in the morning, one man in the road in the morning, one man in the road.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever in the world you are. Welcome to Kambule Campus, the first in a series of workshops dedicated to keeping the spirit of Carnival alive and getting us ready for an online version of Camboulay in 2021. I am Dara Healy. I am the founder of Idecada and the choreographer for Camboulay. And sitting next to me is Eintou Springer, the playwright of Camboulay, and a whole lot of other fabulous things which I don't have time to tell you about.
So there are a lot of ways in which we are preserving Camboulay history and celebrating it. And one of those ways happens to be the Kambule Campus. Can you tell us a bit more about what is Kambule Campus? What does it achieve?
Kambule Campus is a direct intervention by Idecada and by the people who are behind all the work that we do to continue the work that has been started in the Camboulay play. So the intention is to ensure that the meaning behind the play, the history of the time, the important people from that period, the lessons that we learn, that they continue into the now, after Carnival. The Kambule Campus, we have to thank Atillah for the name. So we want to just big her up for that. Whole idea about the campus is that it is a teaching space. It's a teaching forum. And we have decided that because the campus was so successful, we have done explorations in stick fight. We have also looked at the development of the artists. So we had the film company come and talk to us about intellectual property. We have looked at drumming styles and so on. So we looked at the chants in Kamboulé, and we have decided that we want to do even more, so that we are going to expand the focus of the campus, and we are going to continue it throughout the year, because there was such an immense outpouring of appreciation for what we are doing. And so therefore we are going to be looking at a number of other themes related to Trinidad and Tobago culture and heritage, doing the same kind of work that you all are doing here through this Patois program, so that we make sure that our heritage and our culture, that they are not lost, or they are not buried, or they are not distorted in any way.
So of course, people are looking at this episode on Trinidadian Patois speakers on that Facebook page. If we wanted to find out more about Kambule Campus, what you have done, we just want to get more involved in Kambule Campus, how could we find you?
Of course, we are on the usual social media handles, so you can find us on Facebook, on Instagram, and also I would like to invite people to check out our website, www.idacadagroup.com, and you would have an opportunity there to see the work that we are doing, but also to find out, to see us in the news, find out what events are coming up, and you can also make a contribution to the work that we are doing. We have a FundMe TNT account as well, and the funds that we raise go into all the work that we do in communities. It will go into the Kambule Campus, and we worked on a film this year, a Kambule film. We did a short version of it, and our plan is to do the extended full screen version for 2021, so people can make a contribution to that. We also have clothes that we have that people can wear, so I will do my little promotion bit. So,
of course, Boy Man in the Road.
Boy Man in the Road, that's from a chant that we sing, Boy Man in the Road, Boy Man in the Road in the morning. And then we also have Jamet for Life. So after this conversation about Jamet,
yes,
I think people will now feel a little less scared to wear a t-shirt saying Jamet for Life.
I feel rebellious. I think I could do it one of those t-shirts, Jamet for Life.
So right now we take orders directly, as we don't have a storefront as yet. But that's one of the innovations that we are working on, to be able to allow people to purchase using their credit card online and so on. So that we are working on that. But right now you can contact us, and we will do personal deliveries, keeping, of course, within all the COVID-19 protocols, right?
Or you can organize to purchase via, we can deliver it via TT Post. TT Post has a really good service as well. So
okay.
Right?
Where we be? Policy net?
Yes. Where we be, Kambule, 1881.
Yeah, so we just want to say thank you to people who supported the Kambule Campus throughout the carnival period. And we know that people are looking for us to come back on air. We are sending out a call as well to people who would like to support the campus, because it does cost quite a bit in terms of all the sound and so on. But that has never stopped us. We've just been doing it anyway. But it is a labor of love, and you can look out for the campus starting up again very soon. All right, so we want to say thank you to everyone who supported us.
Wonderful. Thank you, Dara. So icadagroup.com, that's the website. You look for that same name on Facebook or the Instagram. You're able to purchase t-shirts, and they have the payment mechanisms is delivered via TT Post. And we also see that film that you're talking about. We'll be able to see snippets of what the Kambule is and the whole structure and story around it in the film, correct?
Well, the film is not available at this point in time, we allowed it to show for a limited period over the carnival, because our intention is that people will be able to download the film as supporting the work that we do, and also to be able to just have it for their own enjoyment. And I just would like to say, however, on the Facebook page, which is called Kambule Movement, you will be able to see previous programs, and we also have programs talking about the importance of Kambule, and looking at the methodology behind Miss Eintou Springer's creation of the play itself. So you'll be able to see that, and we are also on YouTube as well. So please subscribe, like, subscribe, and follow. Right, because we're really about building community. So even if you can't support financially, building community is also really, really important. And we appreciate all the comments and so on. So like, subscribe, and follow us.
Bel bagay nou tini kilti nou kamble nou asu internet. Wonderful. Wonderful.
The sound of the drum calling me.
I hearing the drum and I'm moaning, I hearing the drum and I crying.
The sound of the drum calling me.
On the topic of preserving Kambule, we have so many forms of doing this. And of course, many people have heard about the reenactment, this event that happens around carnival time in the East Dry River area. Can you tell us a bit more about this Camboulay Reenactment, Ms. Eintou?
Well, it used to be a reenactment. It no longer is a reenactment. You know, in the early days, Tony Hall and John Cupid and so had Northern Fullerton had a short reenactment which showed the battle, and also showed some words from an actual person who had actually been a witness to the play. When I was a member of the
Regional Carnival Committee.
And I said, I want to talk about the people who made this possible. For me, the battle came at the end of something. So I wrote this play which explored the lives of the people, the pain, the conditions under which they live, the history of resistance. I wanted to bring these people to life. And as the commentators, I used the Pero, who in itself is an ancestral figure, who also, as a character, is also a dread stick fighter, and all of that. So that the Pero became the griot, the spiritual beings who tell the story. So who are really spiritual beings telling the story. And I must say, I get real help for NCC to take me on. I mean, they wouldn't even look at the script.
Wow.
Take it on. So I walked around with that script for about 2 years, 2-3 years, until I went to Joe Newell Williams, that's minister at the time. And I said, Madam Minister, what do you think about this? And she called me, she said, this is wonderful. You know, we have to do this. And so that therefore she sent an edict to NCC telling them that Kambule have to change to this. And so I always remember her with gratitude for that. And so we started, at first it was by All Stars, and then we went round the Savannah. We first did it, Dara, in 2004. Was it 2004?
Yes, it was 2004.
Right. And we've been doing it since. So
Right.
it's plenty years. And I don't want Dara to really hear this and get a bad reaction to this, because she has been very much in charge of trying to manage this process, as well as being the choreographer for the and so that every year almost the playwright would add new characters and new scenes in the play, which you know, she would shake her head goodly at. But it has been a labor of love. And then it was known as Kambule, and Kambule and all of that. And we changed the name, you know. I'm looking at scripts in 2004. The script says CNBOUY, BOULAY. And by 2005 or 6, it had changed to KMBULA, and which some people have never really accepted. You know, I think NCC still advertises it as
NCC still advertises it as the reenactment of the Kambule, CANBOULAY riots. Well, they used to before.
Well, I mean, I think that historically we can't be revisionist and change the name of what the riot is known as. You know, what we have jurisdiction over is the name of the play, and I think there's a period of transition that needs to happen, and we've been doing that. I think that in the last 3, 4, 5 years, I've seen the KAMBULE spelling getting more and more commonplace. Because the reality of the situation is that people still saying that Kambule means the burning of the canes, even though this consciousness, even though Guinea's Other Sons as a book has been out for 20-something years, perhaps even longer than that, and was republished. And you know, Maureen Warner Lewis is the person who has identified Kambule, KAMBULE, as as an identification of a procession from that linguistic Bantu Congo family.
So Atillah, on that same point, what do you think is the feasibility of having the proper spelling of Kambule and all of this history and all of the work that you have all done collectively enter, for instance, the national school curriculum? I mean, this awareness has to really hit us en masse for us to really understand as a society the origins of this thing and keep it and preserve it to carry it on to future generations. How does that look like?
It's very interesting to me that you know, one of the things that is a challenge with doing a street performance is that it can only ever reach the amount of people who could come to the space. And then you are reliant on somebody broadcasting it, or you're reliant on members of the public doing little snippets in their Instagram stories or whatever, right? There was a time when it would be broadcast live on NCC TV, the TV4. But because of the time that it was happening, lots of people didn't see it. They weren't awake to see it live. This year, when we did the film, was the first year we could actually say, we actually had a footprint to say, yes, okay, 10,000 people tuned in to TTT and watched this, right? And they were from here, 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 and here, right? And, you know, 15,000 people watched it on Digicel Playgo app. And how many ever, and how many ever, and how many ever. So now we can say, all right, cool. There is a demand for this information. There is a demand for this body of work. And this is how we then reach to the next step of doing, as Dara was saying, a full-length film which looks at Kambule properly. And Miss Eintou is, as she says, always adding characters, information, etc. But that's not necessarily always practical for a play. You now see the possibility of doing a limited series. You now see the possibility of gamifying the Kambule world. So bringing in a whole different section and segment of a population.
And I want to say that my impetus to write Kambule has a direct link with my involvement in the Black Power revolution of the 1970 decade. It is directly related to me wanting to tell the stories of my ancestors. The very first plays I wrote was scripts and skits, because we used to have these huge rallies, thousands and thousands of people all over the country, as people know. And I was the one writing the scripts, performing them and so on. Those are my very first attempts at writing theater, where they were not full plays, they were skits, they were small scripts. And that involvement in that made me see and understand the relevance and importance and possibilities of using our theater and our culture to galvanize people. I remember one time in the 70s, I wrote a script. Burroughs had just killed one of our brothers called Santa Cruz. And I put on a skit and got his wife, the wife of the murdered boy, to play herself. And a brother who was very stoic and so on, to play the role of the policeman, to play the role of Burroughs. And we are in Belmont Community Center, hundreds of people packed in. And as the wife was crying, and as the policeman, Burroughs came and he said, "As a policeman, it is my duty," with all the arrogance and the contempt. And the people just moved forward like that. I had to run on stage and stop it because they would have pulled him off.
Wow. Wow, wow, wow.
And so I'm saying that the Kambule didn't drop out of the sky. It came out of my years of involvement in struggle, in the politics of it, and using the culture, seeing how the culture can impact, motivate, and transform people. I remember putting on what is now the Brian Lara Promenade, a production in which we did the burning of Charlie King in a poem to Butler by the Tobagonian poet called Eric Roach. And we threw flambeau to symbolize the burning. It was the day before Christmas Eve, the night before Christmas Eve. On Christmas Eve night, in response to that, the police raided my mother's apartment. 12 of them destroyed the little Christmas tree we had and muddied the place in direct response to showing the burning of Charlie King. So I understand the power. I understand the power of our culture. And that the direct motivation for Kambule. I just wanted to say that.
You didn't think it was going to get all of that, huh?
No, we have a treasure trove here. We have a true treasure trove. I'd just like to say thank you so very much, Miss Eintou, the natural-born storyteller, the person who has lived what she is speaking, what she is promoting. And thank you so very much. Please first, for Dara, please first for Atillah, for being here with us this afternoon to talk about Kambule. at this juncture, I don't think we have any other questions. Probably I will just swing it back to Aisha to see if Aisha has one or two things after we have all of these wonderful, wonderful discussions and these wonderful personalities before us. Aisha, any last word?
Thank you so much. Thank you. This has been a blessing and honor and a privilege just to listen and interact and glean. I feel so empowered and edified personally, spiritually, just listening to everything that was said today. And I want to echo what Kevin said. This was just a rich conversation. I'm looking forward to hearing more. And I can't wait to get onto the Kambule Campus. Listen, one time. You're not sticking with that. So thank you so much, everyone, for this listening in to our episode today at Tout, Bagay, Patwa.
I'll tell you a story you do not know. It's about Carnival and Calypso. It is the folk song and ballad of that beautiful island of Trinidad. Every year there's Carnival, don't forget. That is Trinidad National Fete. On Carnival morning, 6 bell chimes, and everyone they would start to rhyme. Juve, barrio, ba, leve la melaseo.